So this is a live interaction session that is we are in week 8, and in this session we will solve a gate previous question mostly pertaining to chlorination topic. So in the first question, this is the basic question. First we will solve this, then we will proceed to the chlorination topic. We will see how what are the questions that can come from that topic in the gate exam. So beginning with the first question, the first question came in this question came in 2017 in set 1. The question says the wastewater from a city containing a high concentration of the wastewater from a city containing high concentration of biodegradable organics is being steadily discharged into a flowing river at a location S. If the rate of aeration of the river water is lower than the rate of degradation of the organics, then the dissolved oxygen of the river water is first option is lowest at the down location S. Second option is lowest at the point upstream of the location S. C is remains constant at all along the length of the river, and D is lowest at the point downstream of the location S. So before solving this, we should first understand the um, different mechanism of the zone of pollution in the river stream. So basically, zone of pollution in the river stream. So zone of pollution in the river stream. Okay. So there there is a graph. So in this graph, so this is the saturation D. So this is the y-axis depends the DO level. Okay, and this is the distance. X-axis represents the distance. So what happens? The curve. Okay. So see, if we divide this curve, so there will be one division like this, second division, fourth division. Okay. So now see. So what happens? The point where it starts, we call it as a saturated DO. So this is the DO saturated. DO saturated. This is the saturated DO. This point from where it is starting. Okay. So now this section we call it a clear water. Now what happens from this point? So from this point sewage is added. At this point sewage is added. Hmm. So what happens when sewage is added with time? The DO decreases because oxidation of organic matter occurs and the rate of aeration is lesser as compared to the rate of oxidation of organic matter. So at some point after that, the DO becomes minimum. Here it is the minimum DO. So it is the DO minimum. Okay, so this point is the minimum DO. So again, after what happens, one the entire organic matter has been oxidized, so then again the due to the aerations, re-aeration, so other factor responsible for the again rise in the DO level. So again after that point the DO becomes saturated. So you can see, so in all this stage, what happens, the this zone we called as zone clear water. Now, but this zone we call it as zone of degradation. This is the one, this is two, three, and this is the fourth one. So basically, first zone we call it as zone of degradation. Okay. Second zone is referred as zone of active decomposition. The third zone is zone of recovery. Now, the fourth is zone of clear water. So, clear water. So, zone of clear water. Okay, because DO again becomes saturated. So, so this is the zone of the concept is zone of pollution. In the zone of pollution, the saturated DO, once the sewage is discharged, the DO level decreases. Once it is decreases up to a certain point, it becomes minimum. When it becomes minimum, that time that is the zone which we call as zone of active decomposition. So when sewage is added, the DO doesn't become minimum at that point where sewage is added. After a certain point at the downstream, the DO becomes minimum. So if you go, so based on the question, if you see the wastewater from a city containing high concentration of biodegradable organics is being steadily discharged into a flowing river at a location S. So this is the basically location S. Okay. So now if the rate of aeration of river water is lower than the rate of degradation of the organics, the dissolved oxygen of the river water is lowest at location X. This is the wrong. If lowest at point upstream, it cannot be possible at upstream because upstream is the point of clear water. Once sewage is discharged, it at the downstream the DO will become minimum. This is, so remains constant. This is also wrong. At lowest at a point. So this is the option correct. So option D is the correct answer for the option 14. So now addition to this fact, so better to explain every. So now you are well acquainted with the zone of degradation. So in zone of degradation, it is found up to certain distance downstream of the point at which sewage is discharged into the river. Second, second is in this zone algae dies, but the algae dies, but the population of fish starts decreasing. Okay. Third point is in this zone, water becomes dark and turbid. Hmm. So fourth point is DO reduces up to 40% of saturation. 40% of saturation. So this I am talking about zone of degradation. So this zone. Now in the now I will talk about zone of active decomposition. So this is zone of degradation. Now this is zone of active decomposition. Okay, it is a zone of heavy pollution. Second thing is water becomes darker. Water becomes darker than zone of degradation. Third point is DO may even fall to zero. Fourth point is at the end of this zone, DO concentration will reach up to 40% of the saturation DO. So fishes will disappear. Okay, and in this zone, the DO becomes minimum. This is a zone of active decomposition. Okay, so in this other thing is like that at upper ends, anaerobic bacteria will replace the aerobic bacteria. Sets in. So this is the most important part, and in this zone, DO becomes minimum. And now coming to the zone of recovery. So basically, in recovery, what happens? So you can see since there is a recovery, BOD level falls down, and organic matter will produce nitrate, sulfate, phosphate, carbonate, and also DO content rises above 40% of the saturation value. So you see it is rising. Okay, and in case of zone of clear water, what happens? DO rises to the saturation value. Okay, so this is all about the zone of degradation, zone of active decomposition, zone of recovery, zone of clear water. So I hope these all things are clear. So let's go back to our next question. So this is a practice question. So in this question, the among the following disinfectant of wastewater, the one that is the most commonly used. So the first option is chlorine dioxide, B is chlorine, and C is ozone, D is ultraviolet radiation. So the our answer is in wastewater treatment mostly chlorine is utilized. So option B is correct. Option B is correct. That is chlorine is most commonly used as disinfectant because it is powerful, and remains in water and remains in water for a long time. Okay, so this you should know that the chlorine is the most commonly used disinfectant. This question came in previous year gate question. Now coming back to the next question. So the next question says the breakpoint chlorination of water involves addition of chlorine in an amount sufficient to. First option is reacts with any ammonia and readily oxidizable organic matter, kills Giardia cysts, react with inorganic matter or reduce bacterial growth in filters. So in this the our option is so breakpoint chlorination. To understand it, we should first understand the breakpoint chlorination topic properly. How does it, what does it mean, and what happens? Okay, so this is the chlorine residual. Uh, Okay, let's make a. So here it will be a chlorine residual, okay, in y-axis, and in x-axis it is a chlorine added. So chlorine added. So that too in milligram per liter. Here also it is milligram per liter. Okay. Now what happens? This is 0, 0.2, 0.3. So when we add the chlorine, so in the first step what happens? So this is during the disintroduction, the residual chlorine is less in the beginning, during which the iron, due to the oxidation of iron and nitrite. So what happens when we add chlorine? So we added chlorine, and after some time, so the graph will come like this. Okay, so then it will fall, and then again it will rise. Okay, so the fall, 5 milligram per liter, 0.7, and so on. So there are 2 points. So see here what happens when we add the chlorine. This is the first stage. This is the first stage. Then this is the second stage. Okay, and this is the third stage. This is the third stage. Okay, so now what happens in first stage? The destruction of chlorine by reducing compound happens. So from here to here. So 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 in this zone, so what happens? Destruction of chlorine by reducing compound. Okay, in this zone it happens. Now in the second zone what happens? Formation of chloroorganic compound and chloroamine. Chloroorganic compound and chloroamine. Okay, so this is happens at stage 2. Now in stage, so this happens, this entire thing happens from here to here. Now in stage 3 what happens? The destruction of chloroamines and chloroorganic compound. Destruction of chloroamine and chloroorganic compound. This happened in stage 3. Now what happens after, in this stage now happens? So this is the, whatever amount you are adding now, that will be as a residual chlorine. So that is the residual chlorine, and here it is the combined residual. Okay, this point. This point is known as the break point. At this point, chlorine begins to appear as a free chlorine residual. This point is known as a break point. Okay, so now basically, so I will summarize entire thing in the next slide, so it will be easy for you to understand. So basically, what happens during the disinfection? Hmm. So during the disinfection, the amount of residual chlorine is less in the beginning. Amount of chlorine is less in the beginning, that is stage 1, during which iron nitrite are oxidized. Okay, so this is the first stage. In the second stage, what happens? In stage 2, chloroamines and residual combined residual chlorine forms. Chloroamine and combined residual forms. Okay, so combined residual chlorine will gradually increase as the demand for disinfection is satisfied. So see, now this is a combined residual, that is the residual chlorine. So combined residual chlorine will gradually increase as demand for disinfection is satisfied. Okay, so hmm, so this is all about. So in the next, so continuing this, so what happens? So amount of residual chlorine, so amount of residual chlorine would be slightly less than the would be slightly less than applied chlorine, because some bacteria killing occurs. So some bacteria killing takes place. Okay, now see, so what happens? So so this point is suppose C, this point C, and this is the D. Okay, so at point C, what happens? Bad smell starts coming out. It is due to the fact that oxidation of organic matter starts at point C. Hence, the residual decreases. So the reason, so as I mentioned, destruction of chloramine and chloroorganic compound. So, so I will write it. It is better for the understanding. At C, at point C, bad. At point C, bad smell coming out, start coming out due to the oxidation of organic matter. Therefore, the residual chlorine decreases. Okay. So see, you can see as we added the chlorine, that doesn't mean that the residual chlorine increases all the time. So residual chlorine increases after a break point. That is why there is a significance of break point chlorination. Okay. So before that, there are various steps that are happening till point D. So basically, in stage 3, what happens? Free chlorine breaks down chloroamine into nitrogen compound. So as I mentioned, the destruction of chloroamine and chloroorganic compound. So this is what happens in stage 3. Free chlorine breaks down chloroamine into nitrogen compound. So the reaction is plus 3Cl2 gives you N2 plus 6HCl. So this is the free chlorine reacts with nitrogen chloroamine. So then N2 gas is produced. So the chloramine will be NH4Cl, NH3, NH2Cl, NHCl2. Okay. Uh-huh. So this is all about. So the chloroorganic compounds are also destructed at point D. The bad smell suddenly disappear. So at point D, the bad smell suddenly disappears. So this means organic matter oxidation is complete. This implies okay. So this is the point D, sorry. This is the point D at which chloroorganic compounds are destructed and the bad smell disappears, which means that the oxidation of organic matter is complete. Any further chlorine addition simply appears as the free chlorine after this point. So any further chlorine addition simply appears as free chlorine. That is, chlorine breaks away from water. Thus, D point is the break point, break even point, or break point. Okay. So basically, in general practice, what happens? Chlorine is added beyond break point to ensure the residual chlorine of around 0.2 to 0.3 milligram per liter of as free chlorine. So generally, in the so after this point, generally, to some amount of extra chlorine is added so that we can get a residual chlorine of around 0.2 to 0.3 milligram per liter as free chlorine. So this residual takes care of the future contamination. So that is the purpose, like uh, extra amount of chlorine is added. So the another thing, the difference between the applied chlorine and the residual chlorine for a point at or beyond the break even point are called the chlorine demand of water. So this you should know. So so in the difference of applied chlorine and residual chlorine at or beyond break point is called chlorine demand of water. Okay. So from now you know the proper understanding of this break even point. So now, based on this given solution options, the option A is the correct. It reacts with ammonia, chloramine is formed and readily oxidizes and readily oxidizable organic matter. That is a chloramine and chloroorganic compound. That is what I said in the discussion. Okay. So now let's move to the last question of this session. So the question is, the disinfection efficiency of chlorine in water treatment is not dependent on pH value. So first option is not dependent on pH value. The second option is increased by increased pH value. Third option is remains constant at all pH value. D is reduced by increasing pH value. So we will understand the hmm, a concept behind the impact of pH on the chlorination. So first we will understand that concept, then we will proceed. So basically, so when we talk about chlorination, we know Cl2 plus water at pH greater than 5 produces HOCl plus HCl. HOCl basically is hypochlorous acid. Its name is hypochlorous acid. Okay. Now, when in case of HOCl, when at pH greater than 8, so mind the value of pH here. At pH greater than 8, it splits into H plus OCl minus. However, when the backward reaction occurs when pH is less than 7, okay, the chlorine remains in the form of HOCl when the pH value is less than 7, okay, and greater than 5. However, HOCl splits into OCl minus when pH is greater than 8. So what happens? So this OCl minus is a weaker disinfectant. This OCl minus is a weaker disinfectant as compared to HOCl. So when we know this is a weaker disinfectant compared to HOCl, then obviously we want the solution pH should be less than 7. Because if it is greater than 8, the OCl minus is formed and it is a weaker disinfectant compared to HCl. The reason behind it is a weaker disinfectant because negative charge of OCl minus repels the bacteria. Negative charge of OCl minus repels bacteria because bacteria is also negative charge and OCl minus is also negative charge. So there is it repels the bacteria. That is the reason it is a weaker disinfectant. Because it is a weaker disinfectant, the pH value should be less than 7 for HCl. Now as I mentioned that Cl2 plus H2O, when pH is greater than 5, HOCl and HCl is formed. So in the next slide I will write all these things in a stepwise. So since I mentioned it is a greater than 5, then pH less than 5, at pH less at pH less than 5, chlorine does not react with water and remains as free chlorine. Okay, and remains as free chlorine. Second thing is HOCl plus OCl minus and Cl2 are combined called, this is dot, this is minus, and HCl2 are combined called freely available chlorine. Out of this forms freely available chlorine, so out of available chlorine, HOCl is the most destructive. Most destructive. It is 80% more effective than OCl minus ion. So that is the reason the pH, therefore pH of the water should be maintained slightly below 7. So slightly below 7, okay. So based on the option, the disinfection efficiency of the chlorine in water treatment is not dependent on pH value. This is wrong. It depends actually. If increased, so this is also wrong. It does not increase by increased pH value. Remains constant, it is also wrong. So the best correct answer is reduced by increasing the pH value. As I mentioned, OCl minus will form at higher pH value, which is a weaker disinfectant compared to OCl minus, OCl HOCl. So therefore we want the pH of the wastewater should be slightly less than 7. Okay. So apart from these questions, there are few things which you should know. The forms in which chlorine is added. Forms in which chlorine is added. First is as free chlorine, liquid or gaseous form. Second is hypochlorite. That is bleaching powder. Third is chloroamine. Amine, which is ammonia plus chlorine. Fourth is chlorine oxide, ClO2. So this is the important thing which you should know. So apart, this is the one thing, forms in which chlorine is added. And the second is what is the factors affecting the efficiency of chlorination. Factors affecting the first is stability is increased. Bacteria if stability is increased, then bactericidal efficiency is decreased. Okay. Second is in presence of organic metallic compound. If metallic compound are present, then also bactericidal efficiency decreases because chlorine is oxidized. Chlorine is basically utilized in oxidizing this metallic compound rather than killing the bacteria. Third is pH. pH should be between 5 to 7. Okay. Beyond this range, bactericidal efficiency decreases. Fourth is temperature. Chlorine requirement of requirement of chlorine increases with decreasing temperature, and requirement of chlorine increases with decrease in temperature and increase in pH beyond 7, and when pH is greater than 7. Okay. The requirement of chlorine increases when temperature decreases and when pH is greater than 7. Okay. Fifth is time of contact. If increases, efficiency also increases. Bactericidal efficiency also increases. Okay. So these are the few things which you should know, that what are the factors affecting the bactericidal efficiency of chlorine. So other thing which I want to mention, This is the first thing. What's the types of chlorination? So types of chlorination is basically first is plain chlorination, pre-chlorination, post-chlorination, and fourth is so basically when we talk about plain chlorination, only chlorination, and no other treatment is given to water, and no other treatment is given. Okay, so basically it removes bacteria, organic matter, and water, and it is basically used for the clean water. And dose is generally 0.5 milligram per liter. Pre-chlorination, what happens? Chlorine, in this case, chlorine is added before filtration or rather before sedimentation and coagulation. And coagulation. So, so normal dose in this. So basically, in plain chlorination, what is the dose is generally 0.5 milligram per liter. Pre-chlorination, what happens? Dose is generally 5 to 10 milligram per liter, and uh, excessive amount of chlorination is required because chlorine is added before filtration or rather before sedimentation. In post chlorination, what happens? Chlorine apply at the end. So chlorine is applied at the end when all treatment treatment is complete. Okay, so basically in post chlorination, what happens? The dosage is 0.1 to 0.2 milligram per liter. So, and in double chlorination, basically pre and post both are done. Pre and post chlorination both are done. So this is, so basically generally it is prepared to do post chlorination because the amount of dosage is less. If you do pre chlorination, so large amount of organic, so large quantity of chlorine is required, and which adds the cost, operational cost. So because to mitigate such huge expense, we generally prefer to do post chlorination because on 0.1 to 0.2 milligram of chlorine is applied when all the treatments are completed. So this is what about the today's session. So in this session, we first discussed the zone of pollution in wastewater. Then we discussed the chlorine, which is the most the important commonly used disinfectant. Then we discussed the what is the breakpoint chlorination. We discussed the entire graph, what thing happens within the series, and residual, combined residual, then chlorine added, what is break even point. So then we discuss the impact of pH, like how pH influences the disinfection efficiency of fluorine in the water. We discussed the how pH, which is the most effective disinfectant, that is HOCl, the reason behind it. Then what are the, then we discussed what are the different forms in which chlorines are added in the wastewater. that is a free chlorine, hypochlorite, chloramine, and chloroorganic compound. Okay. Then we discussed the factors affecting the bactericidal efficiency. Okay. So then we discussed the time of contact. So apart from chlorination, there are other. So if I tell you some other minor method, the chlorination is the major method. Okay, for bactericide, for killing the microbes. But there are other minor methods do exist. The first minor method is treatment with excess lime. So basically we add limes to kill the bacteria, but excessive, so what happens, the excess lime kills bacteria, but excess lime has to be removed before supply, and for this we generally do the recarbonation. Okay, so this is the treatment with excess lime. Second is treatment with ozone. Ozone, what happens, O3 gets splits up into O2 plus O, nascent oxygen. Nascent oxygen is a powerful oxidizing agent, and it removes bacteria as well as it removes organic matter as well as bacteria from the water. 2 to 3 ppm ozone is required to maintain a residual of 0.1 ppm. Okay, and residual ozone is measured by the orthotolidine test. Orthotolidine. So, other thing is treatment with fluorine and bromide. Their pills are they are available in the form of pills which we add in the water to perform the disinfection. Fifth is treatment with KMNO4. Treatment with KMNO4. So just to elaborate this one, treatment with KMNO4. So it is a popular disinfectant in villages. So it is a for well water supply in villages which are contaminated with lesser amount of bacteria. Okay, so it is a popular disinfectant like KMNO4 which is added in wells water which are lesser contaminated with the bacteria. So basically what happens, this KMNO4 is mixed with water in a bucket. So it is mixed with the water in a bucket, and that is added to the well. So that is added to the well. The pink color forms because of this. If pink color disappears, that implies that the organic matter is present. Hence more KMNO4 is added until the pink color stands. So this is, then the well in which it is added, it is not used for the next 48 hours. So generally 1 to 2 milligram per liter is added in the well as KMNO4, and the contact period is around 4 to 6 hours. Okay. So this was all about today's session. We discussed minor methods. Also, we discussed the types of chlorination. Then we discussed the factors. Then breakpoint chlorination. So this completes the discussions on the chlorination topic. So thank you.